Hey y'all, it is so good to see you again. Today we are going to continue on in our series on the fruit of the Spirit by looking at faithfulness. Now, a lot of people hear this word faithfulness and you think, oh, I've got that. Oh, I've got faith. Sure, yeah, I love Jesus. I've got faith. And you kind of overlook it. You just kind of want to go on to the next one. But I'll tell you what, when you really look at what faith is all about, it does make you stop and think, wow, am I a faithful person? Am I somebody that has a strong faith or weak faith? You know, the disciples constantly were asking Jesus, increase our faith, increase our faith. So being faithful isn't as easy as you might think. Now, a synonym of faithfulness would be something like loyalty or devotion. What you're really saying is, I'm all in. I believe this. I'm trusting in this thing. In fact, Hebrews 11 verse 1 says that faith is the assurance of things hoped in and the conviction of things not seen. Okay, so we're talking again of assurance and conviction of things that maybe you can't automatically see it, but you believe in it. You trust it. You're going to the bank with it. You're all in. You know, I think about oxygen. I don't have to stop and go, oh man, I hope when I take this next breath, I'm going to be able to breathe. No. I've got full faith that every single time I take a breath, that I'm going to be able to survive, that I'm not going to choke, but that I have air and oxygen that's going to fill my lungs. In the same way, when we're saying that we want to be faithful people of God, what that really means is that we want God to be working in our lives so much that when people look at us, they see that we're trusting in Him. They see that our devotion to Him is so strong because there's no other alternative. See, a person who has a ton of faith, and faith that is increasing, is consistently saying to God, I trust you for who you are. I trust you in the things that you said. There's nothing else that's going to take my heart away. I don't want to focus on anything else other than relying on you to keep your word to me. It's this desire that says, I don't want to focus on the things that maybe the world says, well, you need to rely on this to get you through tough times. No. I have faith that God is going to keep His word because I don't want to turn to anything else but Him. It's that devotion. It's that loyalty to Him. And what's so amazing is that whenever we have a heart that wants to be faithful to the Lord, He works in our lives in such a way where truthfully it impacts others. See, when we are faithful to God, when we are so dedicated to loving Him and following His teachings, you know what? That's going to rub off on other people. That is going to impact others. One of my absolute favorite stories about someone who was just incredibly faithful is found in the book of Ruth. We're going to talk about Ruth today. And to give you a little bit of a background, when you get your Bible and you go to the book of Ruth, you find that really it's a pretty short book. There's 4 chapters, and it's basically showing that this lady named Ruth is just such a dedicated person, that her heart is just so faithful to her family and ultimately to God. So, thousands of years ago, we read about this lady named Ruth who lives in this country called Moab. Now, Moab lives like the country situated right next door to Israel. So they're like neighboring countries. And the Bible talks about that Ruth lives there and that she marries this man whose parents named Elimelech and Naomi, well, those are some names, Elimelech and Naomi, that they move with their 2 sons to Moab from Israel. And whenever they get there, Elimelech and Naomi's 2 sons, they marry these 2 different ladies. One name is Ruth and the other is Orpah. And so Orpah and Ruth, they marry these 2 boys, but there's some bad news. Well, unfortunately, Elimelech, the father, he passes away. And then the 2 sons, they pass away. So now it's just Naomi and Ruth and Orpah. And so they're living in this country called Moab, and they realize, you know what? We don't have anyone to take care of us. We don't have anybody to provide for us. And so Naomi says, I'm going to move back to Israel. I'm going to move back and find some relatives to help take care of me. And so Naomi tells her daughter-in-laws, y'all just stay here in Moab. Y'all just stay here and maybe go back to your family. And so the ladies, they start to cry, and Ruth's pretty upset, and Orpah's pretty upset because they love Naomi. And the other thing is that the Moabites, the people who live in Moab, they don't really love God. They don't really know the true God. They worship false gods. And so their culture, it's pretty tough. Well, Orpah eventually says, okay, I'll go back and I'll stay with my family, I guess. And so she leaves. But Ruth, she's different. She starts to cling to Naomi. And this is what she says in the book of Ruth, starting in chapter 1, verse 16. She says, do not urge me to leave you or turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Ruth is saying, I'm all in, Naomi. I'm going with you. I'm not going to go back to where it might be easy, because she knew that going with Naomi was the right call, because the alternative wasn't worth it. Going back home where maybe people didn't love God the way that she did, not having that security, that friendship that she had with Naomi, it wasn't worth it to her. And so she was incredibly faithful to her mother-in-law. And so Ruth traveled back to Israel. But here's what's so amazing. God had specific plans for this family. See, Ruth met and fell in love with this man named Boaz. And Boaz was somebody who was just a very generous and kind-hearted man. And so what Boaz did is he took Ruth, obviously, into his home. They got married, and we see that he took care of Naomi as well. And so where at first it looked like it was going to be a pretty desolate situation for Ruth and Naomi, where they were going to have to struggle on their own, God had other plans. In fact, here's what's so amazing. Boaz and Ruth ultimately became the great-grandparents of King David. Now, if Ruth hadn't gone back with Naomi, would there have been a King David? I don't know. But what we see is that our faithfulness, it does impact others. If there was no King David, then there wouldn't be the Psalms. There wouldn't be all these incredible stories that we know about. And so what we are reminded is this. When we are faithful to God, and when we are all in on his ways, it doesn't just affect us, but we're able to show others just how wonderful he is. We're able to teach others and say, even though maybe life isn't going the way I thought it would go, even if I've relied on something to happen to me and it didn't go quite as planned, I still trust that God has the best for me. And I'm going to go with what God has for me instead of relying on other things to get me through. See, a faithfulness in God says, I trust you, I trust your ways, I trust your judgment, and I'm going to go about my life following your lead. Just like Ruth said, Naomi, I'm following you. Your people are my people. Your God's my God. If you're going to Israel, fine. I'll go to Israel with you. That's how we need to be with God. If he says do this, our heart should say, you know what? I'm going to do it. Loyalty, devotion. But here's what's so incredible. Do you think for 1 second that if we are faithful to God, that God would say, well, okay, yeah, I'm just going to kind of do my own thing? No. God is even more faithful to us. You know what that means? What that really means is that God never stops working in our life. When we become Christians and we start to follow God, what we begin to see is that he's completely devoted to us. He never stops working in our hearts. He never just leaves us to figure it out on our own. No, that's why it's the fruit of the Spirit. That's why he's working within us. He never stops. He never stops being faithful. That is such a wonderful reminder for me today. And I pray it's the same for you. that even in uncertain times, even when we don't have answers, God does. And I am willing to trust him with everything I've got, because for me, there's no alternative. I want to trust my life with the person who knows everything about me, who is fully dedicated to loving me and changing me. And I pray the same for you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to define what faith means to you. What does it mean to you to have faith in God? Are you all in? Are you dedicated to him? In your own words, just find some time to talk to him. Maybe write it down and just say, Lord, here's what it means for me to be faithful to you. And then I just want you to thank him. I just want you to talk to him and maybe find some time later today and to just pray and thank him for leading you and guiding you through life and never giving up on you. But I want to be like Ruth, don't you? I want to be like Ruth, who says, I'm going all in. I'm following and I'm trusting. Let me pray for you real quick. Father God, I just thank you so much for the opportunity that we have to follow you. You've called us to follow. And I know that because of your goodness and because of your kindness, God, you're going to see us through. You don't ever call us to go somewhere or to follow you in a way that leaves you excluded from being with us. God, I just thank you that you never leave us alone, that you're constantly our good shepherd, our king. And Lord, I just pray for every friend listening that they would be able to trust you and that their faith in you would grow strong. Lord, increase our faith. Open our eyes to see ways that you're working. And thank you for always showing us through your word that you are a God worth trusting and worth following. We love you and we thank you so much for Jesus. And it's in his name I pray. Amen. Well, I pray that today's devotion through the book of Ruth would encourage you. Find some time to read through the book of Ruth. It's just 4 chapters. It's tremendous. You are absolutely going to love it. It might take you 20 minutes to read it. I think you're going to see, just as you read through her life story, wow, this lady, this is somebody I want to be like. In fact, I named my daughter her middle name after Ruth. Joanna Ruth. What a name. Anyway, just remember how much the Lord loves you and follow him. Trust him today. I'll see you later.